Hello and welcome to another episode of a Wicked Parley. Tonight we're going to be discussing therapy, and we're going to be looking at, what does it take to be a good therapist? What are the qualities that therapists have that make them unique from people that are not therapists? And looking at some of the stigmas that tie people together that, may or may not be true or not. So we'll have a lively chat, and we'll be able to address some questions if there are any, and kind of present some information. So let's have some fun, guys. So, Rose, what do we got? How do you want to start this?
Let's see. First off, it seems to work out well when it comes to creating a basis, at least for people to have a talking point. Just starting off with some basic definitions of things we might be going over.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, so I'm thinking these three for the most part.
Okay.
Let me go ahead and... yeah. So the first one is therapy, the main talking point of today's episode. It's in the name, folks. So, the first definition is therapeutic medical treatment of impairment, injury, disease, or disorder. Then there's also a second definition of psychotherapy, which, if I go ahead and click on it, says it is a treatment of mental or emotional disorder or of related bodily ills by psychological means.
And to be fair, psychotherapy is probably the preferred definition for this because it's the thing that most people will likely experience if they go to see therapists.
Yes. So, the next one is actually a type of therapy by the APA themselves.
Ah.
What is cognitive behavioral therapy? Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is a form of psychological treatment that has been demonstrated to be effective for a range of problems, including depression, anxiety disorders, alcohol and drug use problems, marital problems, eating disorders, and severe mental illnesses, and probably a lot of things that is not.
Yeah, but for the most part, those are the primary uses for it, and CBT is typically utilized by, psychotherapists and marriage and family therapists, just as an idea, to treat many of the people who come to see them.
And then the last one, we got the Merriam-Webster definition of psychotherapy. Next one is the one from psychiatry.org.
Mm-hmm.
It's psychotherapy or talk therapy is a way to help people with a broad variety of mental illnesses and emotional difficulties, and can help eliminate or control troubling symptoms so a person can function better and can increase well-being and healing.
Yeah, I would agree with that as a pretty darn good definition for psychotherapy. The only thing that I think I would add to it, to this particular thing, is that I wouldn't say that there's healing involved. I think that it's more like aid in healing. It's not, you're not going to go in there and be like, oh, I'm healed. It's more like we're going to set you down the road that leads towards healing.
Not like in games where it's just like you grab a thing.
Yeah, it's not a health potion.
Immediately heal, like nothing happened. Like, no.
Yeah, if you're playing Genshin Impact and suddenly you eat a steak, you're like, this is delicious. I guess I'm at full health. All right.
But I think those three are the main definitions we'd be talking about for today.
Yes, that seems to be accurate. I mean, actually on the fringes we could say hypnotherapy, but let's just not open that can of worms.
We have another episode dealing with that.
Yes.
Which might need a revisit, we don't know.
Oh, for sure. We're going to revisit every single one of these episodes at some point down the line.
So. Alright, let's double check in the chat here. Hello to our viewers. Nothing in the chat.
Okay.
Alright, so while we are talking, we do have some nice, cute looking gameplay to watch. Don't know how many of you happen to already know it, but it is Pick-a-Brick.
This game is
very cute,
obnoxious.
It is obnoxious, but it's very cute.
Yeah, I'm the purple Mewtwo. And Rose
we'll
is
see the purple. We'll see the purple Mewtwo in a bit.
yeah. And Rose is the blue thing, anyways. Okay.
Anyway, so on to talking about therapy.
Okay.
So first thing is, when you hear the word therapy, what pops into your mind? I know for me, when I think therapy, I think of one of two main things. Either two people. Okay, I just thought of a third thing. Never mind. The first thing is two people talking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
One of them usually talking or venting about their problems. Another
Okay.
one is physical therapy for any injuries, such as a broken leg or something sprained, or like you might have had temporary paralysis that you're trying to get back from.
Okay, so some sort of rehabilitation.
Yeah. The third one is animal therapy.
Okay, yeah.
Because it's like, there's a reason I say I like fluffy therapy, and it's just I like petting fluffy things because they make me less stressed.
Totally understand. I'm very similar. That's why I have Odin.
That's my thoughts when I first hear the word therapy. What about you?
Okay, well, the first thing that pops in my head is typically like a couch in an office, and a person sitting across from me in a very comfy chair, usually with like a notepad or something. And I'm thinking of something that's traditionally like considered like psychotherapy, or or someone at least who's using CBT, and usually kind of just discussing problems. So that's kind of what pops in my head.
Okay.
All the
Alright.
kitties.
All kitties. So when it comes to therapy sessions, no matter what type of session it is, there are usually, or for the most part, some goals in mind.
Mm-hmm.
You go there for a kind of reason, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the goal that a therapist tries to achieve, and what is the client trying to achieve when it comes to these therapy sessions?
Okay. I think when it comes to a therapist, most therapists are trying to expose a client to a new type of idea or a new perspective that puts them in a more healthy mindset. I think that that's probably the goal of most therapists, is trying to form some kind of healing effect. As for the client, I would assume that they are attempting to solve some sort of woe that they're experiencing. Now they're trying to, like, maybe they're experiencing depression, maybe they're experiencing something that is akin to some sort of cognitive problem, and I think that they're utilizing the tools that a therapist has to aid something that the person's feeling.
Okay. So, I know with the people that I've talked to personally, and even from what I've happened to hear online through either videos or reading on the news and stuff, that people kind of had their preconceptions about what a therapist does and whatnot. So, if you had to define it in your own words, what does a therapist do? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, I got you. A therapist, I think, at the end of the day, is trying to heal. I think a therapist is trying to utilize the tools that they've gathered over the years that it takes to become a therapist to present new ideas and create a helpful and a supportive environment to aid people through particularly troubling times.
Okay. Alright. Yeah, that sounds similar to what, like, my opinion of a therapist was. Alright.
Okay.
So when it comes to the techniques they're using, obviously there's a ton of them.
Yeah.
Not a lot that I would be able to list, because there's a lot.
That's okay.
Yeah. So what were some of the ideas that went into creating these techniques? Because these techniques had to come from somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, honestly, when it comes to techniques are formulated typically from exposure to a person who is in need of treatment. So this could be like an individual that comes into the office and says, hey, I feel really down for this reason or another, and then they utilize the tools to try and figure out what that ailment might be. Now, sometimes a person comes into the office and outlines a series of peculiar symptoms that we don't really have like an idea of or haven't been discovered yet. And so sometimes that can lead to the development of a new treatment plan that is new entirely from anything that has been seen before. And the way that process begins is typically through a combination of observation and studies.
Okay. So there is research and studies done into making sure these techniques are certified.
Yes. There's an association called the American Psychological Association, also known as the APA, which oversee and make sure that various studies are ethical and that they don't cross any moral gray area, and make sure that the overall goals are positive. So like they're not hurting people in the process of trying to get some sort of knowledge.
Okay, that's good to hear, because I know that I've heard a couple of stubborn people saying that certain types of therapies, or even all therapies, you can tell they don't believe in it. They call therapy a hoax. They think it doesn't work, and that it's just a way to get money. So I'm glad to hear that there's an actual association that helps to certify these things and making sure they're actually helpful rather than harmful. Ooh, something died.
Yeah, I would not pursue therapy if I thought that it was harmful. So I mean, I definitely am not one of those people.
Like fake.
Yeah, no. No, I'm sorry, no. It's not how I would view it.
So I'm glad is it a lot of trial and error, or is there a certain way that they go about doing these things?
For sure, there's a lot of trial and error. I mean, not all people who come into the office are going to have the exact same particular problems. You're going to try and infer some things from other people and some other diagnoses that have some commonality. They're also known as comorbidities. Is the term that's used by psychologists to determine, things. It just means that there's things that both of these particular diagnoses have that are the same. And when they make these particular analyses using comorbidities to describe specific elements involved in creating a potential a treatment plan, they identify the things that are in common with other groups that have similar symptoms. And by utilizing that information, they then try to create a treatment plan that is going to aid all the people rather than just, one. Because, more healthy people, the better.
Yeah, definitely. What type of outliers do they have to keep in mind?
I mean,
because there's always exceptions versus the rule. Because I'm imagining it's a bit harder since, like you mentioned before, not everybody comes in with the same set of issues, and they're not all treated the same way either. Yeah, I mean, honestly,
the answer to that is that they keep track of all sorts of things. The big one seems to be they just kind of keep track of the behavior, the motion. They look to see if some people are, are they eating right? Are they healthy? What things are they doing that's different? What things are they doing that's the same? To be able to identify, okay, this works or this doesn't work.
Okay.
And so people make mistakes, 100%. That is a 100% a thing. And so there can be outliers that are super on the fringes and it makes absolutely no sense, and then there are some people who are this is not an outlier at all, this is just the way kind of things are, and it's oh well kind of thing, but for the most part, and I say that for the most part, I would say that the differences usually aren't so extreme. There aren't people on super fringes that for whatever reason or another aren't able to do that. So there are some, I'm not going to say there's not, but it's not a common thing. Not when you're looking at something very specific, because if you're looking at someone who's experiencing, say, PTSD or depression or anxiety, or some sort of trauma, there's going to be certain behaviors that you're going to expect to see automatically. And so you're already going to have a pretty good idea of, okay, if you do this, then this is how you can treat them, and then if you do this, then you don't. And so it's not crazy to think, oh, I'll already know kind of what I need to know ahead of time. For some parts, and that's kind of important when it comes to developing that treatment plan that we were discussing before, is because the treatment plan allows for a therapist to be able to accurately diagnose and treat various symptoms and other things that might not be so straightforward.
Fair. Are there any well, I guess this will come in during the next part. So, when it comes to any techniques, there's like obviously pros and cons, things that work, things that don't work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that becomes a little harder when, like we mentioned, everybody's different. Everybody kind of needs a different treatment.
Mm-hmm.
So, when it comes to these techniques, no matter what type of therapy it is, no matter what type of subject, they have their pros and cons.
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, what are some of the pros and cons for some of the therapy techniques today?
Well, I think the biggest therapeutic technique might not even be really a therapeutic technique that I I wouldn't call it necessarily one, but although I think some people might, and that has to do with medication.
Oh.
I think that, some people might go, oh, medication, it's totally, that's a thing. And to be fair, I guess it kind of is, a thing, but I don't know if I personally would be like, yeah, that's for sure the go-to, as it were.
Nah, just nah.
Yeah, just no. So.
Fair. Not everybody's a fan of medication. I've got a friend of mine. They absolutely hate medication. If they can find a home remedy for it, they'd rather do that.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, I kind of encourage a home remedy if I'm going to be really honest about it.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, the odds of you being able to be okay with a home remedy exponentially increase. So.
Yeah. There are often times where it's like they'll just go with the pain rather than take medication.
Yeah.
That's how much they dislike it.
I mean, you're entitled to being able to do that. I'm not sure I would do that. I'm not sure I would want to do that, but you could do, you definitely could. I mean, it's all about freedom of choice in this world. Yeah. So, thank God we live in the United States where that's an option.
So, are there any techniques that have been found to work for certain groups of people over others?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously with CBT, which we mentioned before, I think that you definitely see people who are experiencing depression, PTSD, and anxiety as being able to really be able to help. They actually see improvement in their symptoms. Couples that seek counseling, who go through CBT, typically their relationships have a higher chance at being able to be successful, healthy, and thriving. And that's something that, before CBT, you didn't really see that all that often. You end up seeing it actually go quite badly. So, yeah, I mean, I think that there are a lot of pros to it. But, I mean, just with any pro, there's also cons, and it's something to be aware of.
Yeah.
I would say that for the most part, most of the pros outweigh any of the cons that I've seen, with the exception of the use of medications. Medications seem to have too many drawbacks in my particular mind for them to be safe. We don't really fully understand, in a way that I think is reliable, the biology and the neurochemistry involved in certain things like the dopamine systems to actually warrant some of the things that we are currently okay with doing.
Some of those medication labels scare me.
Yeah, like, oh, welcome to Tremfya. There's a page of text, and then suddenly it's like, oh yeah, and by the way, you could also die.
Yeah, you could also die. Hello. Like, I thought medication was supposed to make me feel better.
It's like, no, actually, no. You're gonna die now.
It's like they'll make you feel better for a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like you could make a very bad joke when it comes to that.
Yeah.
No thanks.
I would definitely go with the no thanks there. Yeah, definitely.
No thanks.
What do we got next?
Yeah. So I know that I don't really know too much about what goes into being a therapist. So do you have any... Hold on. Nerd Taffy brings up something important when it comes to the whole medication, if we're talking about pros and cons still.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Some medication can alter our brain chemistry permanently and we don't know it.
That is a real thing. And actually, sometimes you do know it. And that can create its own type of stresses. There are individuals that have been documented that received treatment for bipolar as well as ADHD, who were given specific dosages of certain SSRIs and other medications that significantly altered their brain chemistry and forced them into moods that ultimately led to their suicide.
What?
Yeah, it's pretty dark. It's not well known. Well, it's not well discussed. It is well known, just not well discussed. But yeah, it's a serious concern. It's one of the main reasons why the current system, the way in which it works today, about how like there are like all these like extra steps that have to address some of the problems around creating and regulating certain aspects of data. That's one of the main reasons why they're so hard on people and wanting them to follow the specifics of certain procedures that's outlined by the American Psychological Association. It's because they do not want to see people suffer, and they don't want people to inadvertently, have a pretty unfortunate circumstance.
Okay. That's a good boy.
That is a yikes.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a yikes. I can't even say anything else besides yikes, because that's just what's running through my head right now.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned before, I don't really know about what goes all into being a therapist, because that's not what I'm studying to do.
That's okay.
So
I can answer those questions.
Yeah. So what type of training actually goes into being a therapist?
Okay. So the training that goes into being a therapist, I'm going to start with the schooling, because that's a pretty important element.
Yeah.
So obviously, you either are going to a 4-year, or sometimes some people start like an associate level, to get their their foot in the door, as it were. So either way, you're going to be exposed, just like any other college student, to a variety of different things. So you're going to see your history, your math, your writing, all those other things. But on top of those particular things, you're also going to run into a bunch of courses that have to do with psychology. And so what's going to end up happening is that you're going to get exposed to a whole bunch of different ideas surrounding how people think, and what people's lives are like, and what people's expectations kind of can be. And through that particular process, you actually get, I think, some pretty helpful insight onto what maybe some of your fellow students might be going through. And that is really the gist of the beginning parts of it. Then once you get to the bachelor program, is kind of like if you're doing that particular route, or if you're just going to go straight into the 4-year, then towards the end of your 4-year experience, you will start to have to take courses that are more heavily relying on particularly data collection, statistical modeling, and more social classes that have to do specifically with relatability to people. And it's kind of, that's the whole spiel when it comes to bachelor's. Once you have that, then you can attempt to pursue a master's, which is the minimum gateway for entry to becoming a therapist. And the way that begins with an application. You have to apply, kind of like a job, to schools that offer psychological degrees in whatever element of therapy in which you are trying to pursue. Some people pursue a master's in happy psychology to perform training similar to CBT, and they become therapists through that particular method. Others might pursue psychotherapy and so forth. And so the process is long. There's a large number of exams and tests and things that you have to take that are all stepping stones, that are all building towards essentially your future in the field of psychology. That's basically about the gist of the schooling element. But once you complete the schooling, you're not quite done.
That sounds like a lot of reading already.
Oh, you have no idea. Some people, some people complain about like having to read 7 or 8 chapters a week. I have a bookcase that is dedicated to a very vast sum of textbooks that are relating to essentially the study of psychology, and I have had to read many a page relating to relating to all sorts of things relating to psychology. So
how big are these textbooks?
400 to 800 pages. And we're talking about textbook pages too, so these aren't like
tiny font?
Yeah, tiny font, big paragraphs, like
clunky.
Yeah, you're talking about like, there's a wall of text, that's a page, occasionally broken up by a paragraph. It's like, it's a lot of reading. And on top of that, you also, when you're getting your marriage and family therapist, if you're going to do something like that, or if you're going to pursue some other sort of therapy, you have to typically do something that is not necessarily pleasant, but it can be. helpful, and that is you have to actually go see a therapist on your own. And you also have to do practice where you essentially are, being in a large group and you're all having therapy at the same time. And you're using your classmates as kind of like, help.
So not only the textbook knowledge to know these diagnoses, how do you pronounce the plural form of diagnosis?
Diagnoses.
Thank you. So those, and then the physical experience to like actually get a grip on it, rather than just throwing you to the wolves.
Yeah, they don't just throw you to the wolves. And you're not even done once you have the master's degree. Because once you eventually get through the master's degree, which is very similar to the bachelor's degree, except for you're going to be taking a lot more psychological dense course material, which will feel very similar to your last year of any bachelor program. It's just going to basically be equivalent to whatever's going on there. But it's just going to be more detailed courses. So instead of having just like a little bit, you have a lot of information. What ultimately I think ends up happening to most people is that they get through it and then they have to take the certifications. And the certifications kind of work like this. You have to have a certain number of hours where you essentially are guided, either sometimes assisted by a therapist or sometimes you're doing it solo and you're doing basically therapy with clients. And depending upon the state you're in, depending upon certain schools and things like that, the certification can be anywhere between 2,000 hours and 5,000 hours. And that process, yes, 2,000 or 5,000 hours, and that's like, like 1 hour sessions, 2,000 or 5,000 times. Yeah, it can take people quite a long time to get through the certification process. I've known people who can blaze through it in about a year and a half. I've seen some people get through it in 2 or 3 years, and I've even heard somebody complete it in 10 years. So this process is not an easy one. And then, you get the glory, the wonder of being able to treat people at, pennies on the dollar. You will not become rich by being a therapist. You're doing it because it's a good thing. It's a feel-good job. That you're helping your common man. You're helping society, but you will not get rich doing that.
Goodness gracious! I'm just thinking about the amount of hours.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like I wouldn't mind doing that for teaching because that's something I want to do. So it's like you have to really like doing what you're doing when it comes to therapy.
Yeah, and I really like helping people, so that's why I'm pursuing what I'm pursuing. I see a comment in the chat.
Yeah, it was about the whole like reading expectations for the schooling aspect of, becoming a therapist, where we mentioned that people gripe about the 7 chapters per week thing. Nerd Safi says 7 chapters per week is doable, but for people who aren't avid or regular readers, it can sound like a lot.
Yeah.
For me, it's also keeping in mind how big are those chapters and what the actual like text box look like.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, it's like there's a small difference between 7 chapters that are like 10 pages each and they're relatively big font versus 7 chapters which are like 100 pages each and they're tiny. That just horrifies me.
Yeah.
God.
Totally understand that.
No, thank you very much. So, what type of scenarios could lead to needing therapy? Not like anywhere between something small. Well, okay, I won't say small because of that's a bad word to use for it. But like anything that seems from on like small scale to large scale, depending on the person. Like anywhere between like tragedy to stress outlet to just like needing insight to business or running a business like you mentioned before. Like what type of scenarios and things could lead to needing therapy?
Well, truly speaking, most people, like go see a therapist for all sorts of reasons. You could be a CEO of a company that is trying to determine whether or not, somebody is, able to do a job in a certain way, and you want to just be more proficient at it. You could be a person who is, doing something in sports and is just like, hey, I really need like this like, advice because I'm feeling like things are really bad for me right now. And it could be that. Virtually anything you can imagine kind of fits in that particular caveat. There's no one reason to go see a therapist. Truthfully speaking, it's anytime that you feel like you need to have someone to talk to that's not going to be a close friend because you're maybe afraid of offending someone. That is an example of needing to go of when therapy is a valid option.
For anything, really. Okay, that's good, because it's like I know some people think that therapy is only for like certain scenarios.
Yeah. Honestly, like that's one of those stigmas that always have kind of bothered me a little bit. It's like, no, that's not really like the case. Truthfully speaking, I mean, like, if you have a problem, like, who exactly are you hoping to run into to be able to address the problem? You know, are you going to talk to a family member or a friend, and are you going to be able to really have the ability to have the insight to have that conversation in a way that isn't going to potentially create problems for you in the future? I'm not sold on the idea that that's the case necessarily. So, it could be something else. So.
Maybe. Yeah, the idea that just you have to have a problem.
Yeah, you do not have to have a problem necessarily.
God, no.
You might just like I know some people who go to therapy who after a bad week or something like that, they go see a therapist, because they need the ability to just talk to that therapist and be able to get some of this stuff off their chest.
Some people just need a sounding board.
Yeah, I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. Not a damn thing. So I encourage anybody out there who needs therapy, go ahead. Don't feel like you're having a problem. Don't feel like, oh, because I don't have that big of a problem that I shouldn't go see a therapist. I can just deal with it myself. It's like, no, if you feel like, hey, I need to talk to somebody, then that's your cue to go, hey, go do that. And the cool part is that if you're a university student at the very least, most campuses offer in their health center the option to go see a therapist, like for free, usually.
I remember at my old university for my bachelor's degree, I do remember seeing things about therapists, but I also remember they had this program which allowed people to get free massages once per week for like 5 minutes, and by God, that was a stress reliever.
Heck yeah, there you go.
Massage therapy. It's like a little bit of massage therapy.
Hey, sometimes that's all it takes to, like, it's not like it's
Oh God, I remember this part of the game.
Oh God, yeah.
I kept messing up so much.
This was rough. This was
I kept messing up. Anyway. Yeah, there it is. Anyway, so we've talked about what goes into becoming a therapist, what could be, quote, needed to have therapy. What traits do you personally believe people need to be a good therapist? Not just any therapist, but a good therapist.
Well, I'm going to say this, and this is probably not a shocker, but you need to be able to impart the idea of trust. You need to be sympathetic to the needs of the clients that come and talk to you. You need to be able to be empathetic with them. And you need to be able to be thoughtful and understanding to whatever they might be experiencing. And if you're not able to do that, then you're kind of like in a kind of a rock and a hard place.
They can't exactly talk if you don't trust them with your stuff.
Exactly. Like, how are you supposed to be able to take the advice of a therapist if you don't trust the advice that they offer? It's I think it's a bit of a perplexing problem if you think about it. You're like, well, how do I guarantee that this guy isn't going to just completely fuck me over? Like, what is the actual idea here? So, I mean, I think that one of the most common mistakes that a lot of people make is just not being able to ask for help when they need it. Yeah. So. And I think that, like, when it comes to it, like, other traits that are important for a therapist are the ability to be able to conversate, to be able to be relatable to the people whom you encounter. You need to be someone.
I definitely wouldn't want to like talk to somebody who's like going to act like a pompous prick.
Yeah, you don't want a Frasier like type of personality. If in a perfect world, if we're gonna look at media, you want like Will Smith, or not Will Smith. Oh my gosh. Oh my god, I totally fucked that up.
No, you're good. I think this is the one I actually made it. Yeah, I didn't F it up that way. Anyway.
No,
so nothing like Frasier?
Nothing like Frasier. You want to have like good therapeutic ideals. You know, you want to be able to follow certain like character portrayals. If you you look to media. I think Good Will Hunting it does a pretty good job. Robin Williams is a great therapist. Plays a great therapist role in that particular movie. You want to see how a person who's struggling with a series of problems. Matt Damon's character, I believe, is abused, and so like he's able to kind of reconcile some of those demons and whatnot. So it's kind of like one of those I guess good movies if you want to watch and see how a therapist could act and could be in certain circumstances. I also think that one of the other big levels of therapy is being able to come down to a person's level, meet them where they are. You know, I think that if you're a super happy, poppy person and the person has just had a dark tragedy in their life, the last thing on earth that they particularly want is somebody who's all super bubbly and happy and just like, oh my god, you kind of think it's like, no, no, you don't want that. You know, bring them to where they're at. And I think it does a world of help because it makes you relatable. I think that's the main goal, is you always want to be the person that they can feel comfortable coming and talking to you about issues. You do not want to be the person that pushes things away. And I'm glad that Nerdsap you like Good Will Hunting. It's a great movie. I actually downloaded it the other night and rewatched it because I'm just like, I love this movie.
Nice. Oh, we pushed the button.
Yeah, don't push the button, people. Don't ever push the red button.
Yeah, as Nerdsappy reiterates, therapists talk to people about very personal stuff. If you can't trust your therapist, how are you going to feel comfortable opening up about said personal things?
Yeah,
Not even just trusting their advice, it's just anything personal that you keep to yourself. It's like, how are you supposed to trust them with that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like when it comes down to it, like I think that like trust plays such a huge role. It's so important. And I think a lot of people who portray therapists in movies and TV shows very rarely ever show that particular side of things. More often than not, they portray it in a particularly negative light. So, or they don't consider all the other ramifications, and so the portrayal seems like it's missing something.
Yeah.
Also, like a good therapist needs to have boundaries. You know, they need to be able to, they need to be able to show that, hey, I'm not your friend. You know, I'm here to help you. I'm here to, push you where possible. I'm here to, discuss these issues. And I'm not someone to be offended. I'm not someone that, you need to be considerate of necessarily.
Just tell me what you need to tell me.
Exactly. I'm here for you, kind of thing. So. I think those are some of the qualities that go into a good therapist. There's so many more that I'm not mentioning, but I don't want to be here all day going, these are the things that we need to discuss, you know?
You could spend hours talking about what you think
makes
a good therapist.
Yeah, I could. I mean, all elements of communication, being able to socially interact in a way that doesn't detract from someone. You don't make the person feel less. As I mentioned briefly about coming down to their level, matching their energy, are all things that are important, things that are probably not frequently discussed or even acknowledged, are all excellent points that basically point towards these things are what helps a conversation. This is what allows a person to open up. If I do these things that are not that, then I am making that person, at the very least, feel insecure and more than likely alienating them, which is going to be counterproductive.
Oh yeah.
And so, I think that's kind of like the goal, and that's kind of like one of the things. And so, while we could talk about it, if people are interested in hearing about it more, of course, hit us up in the chat. Let us know on our email, awickedparley@gmail.com, and maybe send us a message on TikTok even if you want, and we'll take a look. Let's move on to the next one.
For sure. As you can tell, he's very passionate about this.
Yes, I really want to make sure that people are given the correct information and people, actually get the help that they need if they need help, and to know you're not a bad person if you're like, hey, I need to go talk to somebody, because what, we're all people. We all need to talk to people. Even I need to talk to people. I have had therapists. I will have therapists in the future. It's an important thing. So I hope to, maybe in that way, at least destigmatize some of it, and then let people know, hey, this is okay. This is not like the worst thing in the world. And don't ever push red buttons. Let's just not do that.
We're very terrible, as you can tell.
Yeah,
Hi, Kyle.
just
It's been a
awful.
while.
Hi,
That
Kyle.
rhymed. I didn't even mean it.
Hey, no, you're a poet. You didn't even know it.
Ah. Anyway, so I do have a quick question.
Sure.
So, for those looking for a therapist, obviously there's like different types and whatnot.
Sure.
But how do you know which one's right for you? Like, it's pretty easy to find a therapist online, such as, let me go ahead and pull this up.
Sure.
Okay, let's pause the deck for right now.
Okay.
And, like, you can just Google,
Yeah.
like, this thing.
Mm-hmm.
How do I find a good therapist? From the APA.org.
Yeah, and I would recommend definitely using the American Psychological Association when
So, like, how
trying
do
to
I
do
find a
research
good-
like this.
yeah. So it's like they bring up some important things that I'm sure you can discuss in more detail, like is therapist license,
Mhm.
health insurance, limits to the number of sessions, and then there's like the locator and national register and whatnot.
Mhm.
But,
Okay.
like, how do you know they're actually good for you in your scenario? In your
All right.
case and whatever?
There's a couple of things that you kind of run through scenario-wise, right? So the first thing is you got to ask yourself some questions about yourself. Are you comfortable talking with a person of the opposite sex? To perhaps your preferred choices. If you're a heterosexual guy, are you cool talking to a woman about certain psychological problems? That's a question to ask yourself, because that's going to dictate the type of people who might be available. Maybe you're like, hey, I have to talk to a guy. Well, guess what? That's a lot less therapists, because women dominate the field of psychiatry and therapy, and so it's that's just the way it is. And so what I would say is that when it comes to the overall opinion I have of most therapists is that there are good therapists out there, but the vast majority of therapists are just like with any sort of thing of preference. You got to find the people that you click with. You don't like every single person you encounter, so you're not gonna like every therapist you encounter.
Like with this comment from Kyle.
What's the comment?
I've been in therapy before. It can be great, or it can be a waste of time. 40% of therapy is the relationship with your therapist.
Okay. I mean, if that's
Or
what
similar?
I think that percentage is going to be determined by the individual. But 40% seems like a good number to me. I don't particularly know exactly where I would place the importance of it, because I think that it's a little too hard for me to untangle the concepts surrounding it. From my experience, it's kind of been situational. Some sessions are amazing and they're incredibly eye-opening, while others are just building the relationship towards building common ground and trust. So all things of good therapists that I've had seem to have a correlation with the development of the relationship between both the client and the therapist. And the individual sessions themselves seem to vary in content and quality with the person, because it's not, you don't wake up every day as an all-star. I'm sure most of you guys are superstars out there, but there's definitely days where you kind of wake up and go, you know what, this day sucks today. And guess what? Therapists are people. Yeah, exactly. And there are people who are, not great all the time. And guess what? It's human.
We're human beings.
Yeah, so I would say that my biggest thing is that don't get disheartened by the fact that maybe you run into a therapist and you guys just don't click, and it's okay. I mean, after like a session or two, you're like, hey, you're not doing it for me. I need to find somebody else. Do it. Just find somebody else. It's not the end of the world. I definitely think.
Anything.
Oh, I was just saying this. I definitely think that when it comes to insurance and when it comes to the number of sessions, that is definitely something that you want to observe ahead of time. But there are ways of circumnavigating and extending those things as needed, and that is a power that is given to the therapist and the business. So don't be afraid if you're like, oh, my insurance only covers me for 6 sessions. You're like, or 8 sessions. You're like, I think I got more issues than that. It's like, well, a therapist can write an appeal to your insurance agency, and they can decide whether or not you can get more or not. The answer typically is they usually add a couple, but not the full amount, which means that usually the therapist will ask for way more than you actually need in an attempt to get what you actually need. So if a person's like, I need 6 months of therapy, really it's only like a month or 2. It's like that way they can kind of get the number they actually need. So,
Rather than undershooting.
yeah, and I'll be 1,000%. The worst element of being a therapist has to do with the insurance, which is the reason why one of the things
Paperwork.
yeah, well, no, not the paperwork part. It's just like there are so many people who need help, and so many people you have to turn away because their insurance isn't covered. And if you try to treat them without insurance, then you can affect your license.
Really?
It's kind of like a dentist, yeah. Like, I know people don't know this or not, but like, yeah, if you try to do something that is against what the normal thing is, like you try to charge a rate or something like that, that's different, right, than what everyone else suggests, then you can be actually like kicked out of the profession. It's kind of crazy.
Dang.
Yeah. So like that's
I really didn't know that.
yeah, so that's the reason why like it's really good if you're going to be a therapist to try and be like, I'm going to be on my own. I'm going to create my own agency and I'm going to be my own boss. A lot of therapists do that. It's expensive for their own protection, but it's something that I personally would advocate for any person who's being an aspiring therapist, and it I think is a good thing in all. I actually don't know who that is, Kyle. If you wouldn't mind sending me a link with information surrounding that individual, I would be very curious to read about that.
Yeah.
Because I actually legitimately don't know that.
I didn't know the 40% number came from a study.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Huh, interesting.
Okay.
Alrighty then.
I mean, it sounds right. I mean, but like, yeah.
Sounds like it could also fluctuate, like have a bit of variance.
I would imagine it has to. I mean, we're people, and not all people are the same. But I mean,
yeah, statistics. It's how statistics work.
Well, statistics, in my particular opinion, is bullshit. Well, it's not statistics. You literally, it's like the art of how to create your own fucking number. Like, it's like I'm gonna go look for this thing. Ooh, look, I found it. I mean, guess what? Oh, surprise! You found what you were looking for. It's like, okay.
It's like, hello.
So, anyways, but yeah.
What are some other things that a person who's looking for a therapist might need to look out for besides health insurance, preferences, anything else?
Oh yeah, they need to understand what's the type of therapy that which they're trying to do. I mean, like let's say for instance, right, that you're a person who's having some marital problems, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could go to a CBT therapist, you could go to a marriage and family therapist because, frankly speaking, they're very similar, right? But you're not going to go to a hypnotherapist for marriage problems, or if you do, then you probably shouldn't. And so making sure that the therapist actually is knowledgeable, or at least aware of the type of thing in which you're actually pursuing in treatment is pretty darn important in my particular opinion.
Yeah.
And so it's something that I would say is a pretty important suggestion. But yeah. So.
Alrighty then.
Yeah. I mean, what's the next question?
Yeah. Let me just double check the chat real quick.
Sure.
Alright, we're good. So the next thing is, I've heard a couple of misconceptions about like what a therapist is able to do versus like say a psychiatrist.
Okay.
Like I've heard the phrase that a therapist is able to prescribe medication, and I know for a fact that's not actually the
Yeah,
case.
I remember telling you about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the main difference between a therapist and a psychiatrist is that a psychiatrist went to medical school.
Yeah.
And while at medical school, they were able to study pharmacology and whatnot to be able to prescribe various medications. A therapist can suggest medications based upon a series of observations, but most therapists do not actually handle medication, because typically, if they're a therapist, if they have a therapy license, but they also have like a they're like a psychiatrist, then they're going to say I'm a psychiatrist, because it's a more lofty title, and it also allows them to occupy more spaces and more jobs. I would pursue it I would pursue that particular avenue, because it is definitely an avenue that gives you more exposure, more job opportunities, so to give you more opportunities to help people. If I believed in medication actually helping people, but I actually kind of don't believe that medication helps people all that much. I think whenever you add a substance to your body, whether it be a controlled substance like alcohol or marijuana, or even like a Benadryl, like those things all have inherent risks and problems that are associated with it. Yeah. That to me, I think in some ways inhibit the body. and cause more harm than good.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
The side effects again terrify me
Yeah.
in so many ways.
Side effects are just rough. I mean, to be honest with you, they're just totally rough. So.
It's very sad how many. Well, I find it sad how many things just get medication thrown at it like that'll solve everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just the easy option, and I think a lot of times, we live in a fast food world, and people they want their solution, they want their answers, they want it right now. I'm not waiting for anything, and so like a pill offers that ability to some people who want it. So it's like, I mean, I'm not happy about it, but.
All right. So, let's see. So, one of the other things I wanted to ask is, what can therapy be used for? We know it can be used for any, quote, issue, big and small. It doesn't even need to be for an actual issue. It could be you just wanting to vent and stuff.
Okay.
But, like, what can people expect when it comes to therapy? If it's... I know you mentioned it's not uniform, like, across... borders or even across in like some states and stuff, depending you said depending on your country or county, depends the number of hours you need for your training.
Yes.
And stuff like that. So what can people expect when it comes to their therapy? Like, are there any stereotypes that can be debunked? Are there anything that is as universal as can be when it comes to something so diverse?
I mean, I think there are some things. I think there's some commonality, and I think there's also some, like, things that are just different. I'm going to start with the debunk thing. I think that the big debunk thing that I think that's important is to do with the fact that anyone who seeks therapy has automatically something wrong with them, and that they are a danger to themselves and or society. That is just simply not true. Most people who experience problems in their lives are not violent. They're not a threat. And a therapist's job and role is not to vindicate those people. It's to help those people through particularly trying times. And I think that's one of the big things I'd like to make sure that we try and address.
Yeah.
I would say beyond that, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, there's a variety of things that therapists do. There's a whole bunch of different things that they actually help and whatnot. And so it's difficult to really pin it down in one way. Was there a particular element of the question that you'd like me to maybe dive deeper that I can kind of focus on?
It's pretty much like... Let me think on that. Like you mentioned before, it's therapy is used to heal, so people also should not expect for like one therapy session and they're good.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. You're not going to go see a therapist and be like, "Well, guess what, guys? I am good to go." That's not how it works.
I would also imagine that for therapy to work, you also need to want to be able to fix whatever's going on in your life, if it's an issue or if it's just something you want to solve.
Yeah, I mean, like, you see that all the time with court-mandated therapy, where a person is, sent there because the courts say, "Hey, you need this." I mean, and I guess I should explain a little bit about this. Like,
yeah, sure.
Okay, so like court-mandated therapy typically happens. You see it more often happen in divorce cases where the parents are vying for who gets custody rights. And in those particular circumstances, things can get kind of nasty. And one of the things that they try to do, so the lawyers are kind of, they're being nefarious, is they try to claim that one parent is not psychologically sound and they're not fit as a parent. And so what they'll order is a psychological evaluation where a person who probably is, fairly balanced, maybe perturbed that they're going through a divorce, but overall balanced, is being more or less mandated at how to actually be a good parent, or how do you show that you prove that you're not this bad guy that perhaps this lawyer is making you out to be. And so you get this adversarial kind of conflict that happens with people who go into therapy under that pretense, and it's kind of sad, and it comes at the cost of the relationship with the parents and the kids. So it's one of those things that's kind of like important to kind of understand. And the best way that I've seen it handled when a person does not want to be in therapy, but yet they're kind of forced to be there, is just to be like, look, neither of us really want to be here, but this is going to help you out in the end, and so let's make this work so that way you can get what you really want at the end of the day.
Another thing about like what therapy can be used for, like, I know that there are oftentimes other techniques placed in tandem with what the therapy sessions are about, like psychotherapy on top of maybe physical therapy, or like having a diet, or like making a certain diet, or
Certainly.
like, or having certain exercises done, or like other things that are tacked on to the normal sessions, quote sessions.
Yes.
So like what type of extra things do they kind of tack on or add on to kind of help you with whatever issue maybe?
Okay. Yeah, certainly. So you did touch on diet. You know, a lot of people, you know, in the United States actually don't recognize just how important diet is to, you know, overall psychological well-being. You know, it is not uncommon at all to see a therapist tell a client, hey, you know, you should just go ahead and eat some more vegetables. You should go ahead and have, you know, more protein. You should have less, you know, food with a lot of preservatives. That is a fairly common occurrence in the field. So, yeah, I mean, that would be, I guess, some of the things that you might unexpectedly see. Another one might, I mean, like, I've heard of people being like, yeah, you just need to go have sex. Like, like, you just need to go get laid. Like, and I'm like, wow, okay, that's probably helpful for some people. But like, oh, this is okay, this is normal. And it's like, yeah, actually. So, yeah. Those are some, I guess, unexpected things you might not expect when it comes to those. Oh, do you have any more?
Okay.
More like questions?
Let's see. Just let me think. Let me also take a look at chat here.
Okay.
Okay, I have not watched that series, and
I have. Kyle,
Yeah.
I have watched that series, and I've watched that episode, and it's a hilarious episode. Yeah.
That's I mean, that's a use, but it's a good thing it's a cartoon.
Yeah, it's a cartoon. Let's point this out here now. As a cartoon, to actually make a person forget things is so unethical and so messed up in so many ways. I don't even know where to begin with that necessarily, other than just simply to say that's like, if that was ever a reality that you could actually do, I would highly encourage never doing that. Because when the person eventually will find out, you will lose all the trust that they have for you, and probably the love that they may have for you as well. That is gone.
So let's see. Do you happen to have any kind of last moment comments about therapy that you want to make sure that our audience and other people who may be watching in the future know about therapy, what it's about, or how it works, or what's not actually correct about what you hear about it?
Okay, all right. So I guess the main thing is that I want people to know it's okay to go see a therapist. There's nothing wrong with you for needing to be able to talk to someone, to convey ideas. I mean, people have been doing it not in therapeutic ways, but like in, like, you know, church ways, I suppose. Like, you know, like if you're a Catholic and you go see like a priest, and you know, go to a confessional or something like that. People need to talk to people. I mean, you know, we're living in a society that is growing in a way that is less focused on the group and more focused on, like, really, I would say, not helpful, mundane bullshit. But at the end of the day, like, you need to be okay with being who you are, expressing who you are, and living in accordance with what you are, what beliefs you identify with. And yeah, I mean, be a good person, be you, but don't compromise your integrity and your values to fit some narrative that you think some people care about. Because at the end of the day, most people don't give a shit. Let's be real here. Like, most people don't really care. What they really want is to just live out their life to be as productive and useful and blah 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 as they possibly can. You know, like, and that's really the way people. I think most people probably actually
Do what you need to do to make sure you're healthy.
Yeah, exactly.
If people who say otherwise and say something's wrong with you.
Yeah, exactly. Fuck those people. They don't want what you really want, anyways.
You'll know who your friends are if they want you to get help rather than being fake about it.
Yeah, and also understand like that there are resources out there for people, so don't get discouraged. You know, like look, and you will very likely succeed and find what you actually want. So. Be aware of all the concerns and all the things that exist. And, you know, if you have any more questions, or if you're like, hey, I'm not really sure if this is the right therapist for me, then go ahead and send us an email, and we can maybe at least give you a suggestion. Hey, like this looks good to me. You know, maybe I even ask you a couple of questions about what you're looking for and just double check, and maybe that might help you out when it comes to those things. I'm totally willing to have that kind of conversation and discussion with anybody who needs it, because at the end of the day, you know, we're a community. Everybody, you know, let's make everyone happy, make everyone better, you know. And I'm not saying let's you know all go frolic into the woods, but hey, let's go all frolic into the woods.
And I know for people who might be looking now, whether it's like anybody in the audience or anybody in future episodes, if you're in school or if you have a job, there's usually sources that you can find with HR, and I know that a bunch of colleges nowadays have those resources in the syllabus.
Yeah. They're definitely in the syllabuses of the courses I'm taking this semester, so I can testify.
They're always
that's real.
in mine. Like, that's the thing that's just always put. That's mandatory by the provost, actually.
Okay, well, there you go. Little extra fun facts.
Yeah. So it's just like, if you're looking, if you're at work, you can check out HR. If you're at school, check the syllabus, funnily enough. Also check HR and, like, student resources. They're always grand old time to help out. And then even just looking online, just as long as you find the one that's right for you. And I do mean the one that's right for you, not just other people around you.
Don't settle for just anybody. Make sure that you have a genuine connection with the individual, that you can create a situation where you can actually trust the advice that they give, because that's important. And you are worth it, people out there that are listening and in the future. You are worth the help. Go ahead and do it. Don't be afraid. It'll be okay. You are going to get through this.
You will feel a lot better afterward.
Yes, honestly, you will. And I think that, like, at the end of the day, it's like, hey, acknowledge the fact that no one does anything in life solo. And it's not a weakness to go, hey, I need help. So.
All right.
With that being said, I think I just want to say that thank you for everyone who came and supported the episode. Thank you for those of you in the future who, you know, like, comment, and subscribe. Super appreciate that. And we'll definitely see you all in the next one. Have a good night, everybody. Later.